Okay, close your eyes for a second unless you're driving or something, then keep them open. Picture yourself in a medieval hamlet where the streets are basically mud soup, the houses are made of straw and prayers, and the closest thing to a dating app is a bard strumming a lute. It's the 14th century, and you're totally crushing on someone, maybe the baker's son with flour-dusted hair, or the weaver's daughter who's got that medieval glow. But here's the kicker, you can't just send a flirty hey or post a cute story to get their attention. Instead, you're sneaking through the shadows to buy a sketchy little vial from some hooded figure who claims it'll make your crush fall head over heels. Sounds like a rom-com, right? Except these medieval love potions were often brewed with stuff like arsenic or mushrooms that'd make you see stars, and not the romantic kind. Welcome to the bizarre, risky, and sometimes lethal world of medieval romance where love could literally be a killer. Let's rewind and set the stage. Life back then wasn't exactly a vibe. We're talking Black Death lurking around every corner, crops failing like a bad Wi-Fi signal, and a life expectancy so short you'd be lucky to hit 30. People were just as desperate for love as we are today, but their options were, let's say, limited. No Bumble, no coffee dates, no let's Netflix and chill. So what did they do? They turned to what they thought was magic potions and elixirs that promised to ignite passion or lock down someone's heart forever. The recipe was simple: grab some herbs, maybe a frog's toe or two tossed in something that sounds like it belongs in a witch's cauldron, and call it a love potion. But here's where it gets wild. These concoctions weren't just useless half the time. They were straight up dangerous. Think less spark of romance and more spark of doom. Take arsenic, for instance. Yup, the same poison you'd see in an Agatha Christie novel was a star ingredient in these so-called love potions. Medieval alchemists and village-wise women would mix a pinch of it into wine or water, claiming it'd make someone fall for you. Why? Because in tiny doses, arsenic could make your crush all flushed, sweaty, and a bit woozy, symptoms that people back then might mistake for wow, they're totally in love. Spoiler alert, they weren't in love, they were just one bad sip away from meeting their maker. And then there were the mushrooms, not the kind you'd toss in a stir fry, but the deadly ones like belladonna or fly agaric that could make your heart race or your vision blur. Sure, your crush might seem enchanted staring off into space, but that's probably because they're hallucinating or worse, knocking on death's door. Now let's be real, medieval folks weren't exactly working with a chemistry degree. They didn't have Google to double check if death cap mushroom was a good idea. Most of these potions came from a mix of folklore desperation and whatever the local wise woman had in her creepy pantry. Some recipes even called for stuff like mandrake root, which was thought to have magical powers because it kinda looked like a tiny shrieky person when you yanked it out of the ground. Spoiler, it wasn't magical, just toxic. And yet people shelled out their hard-earned coins or a chicken or two for these potions, hoping to win over their beloved. Imagine the scene: you're at a medieval market dodging goats and plague rumors, handing over your last silver for a bottle of love juice that smells like regret and tastes like a chemistry experiment gone wrong. Romantic, not so much. But here's the thing, why were people so obsessed with these risky brews? It's not like they didn't know the dangers. Well, maybe they didn't know all the dangers, but they'd seen enough folks keel over after a bad potion to get the hint. The answer lies in the stakes. Back then, love wasn't just about butterflies in your stomach. It was about survival. Marrying the right person could mean securing food protection or a better spot in the village pecking order. A good match could be the difference between starving in a ditch or living to see another harvest. So when a mysterious potion promised to seal the deal, people were willing to roll the dice even if those dice were spiked with poison. Now fast forward to today, we might laugh at the idea of chugging a toxic potion to win someone's heart, but are we really that different? Think about it, we've swapped arsenic for carefully curated Instagram profiles and mushroom-induced trances for late-night texting marathons. Instead of sneaking to a wise woman's hut, we're Googling how to make your crush like you, or dropping cash on dating apps that promise the one is just a swipe away. Sure, our methods are less likely to land us in a coffin, but the desperation, the hope that there's a shortcut to love, that's as old as time. Medieval folks were out here risking it all for a shot at romance, and we're still chasing that same spark, just with better lighting and fewer fatalities. So what's the deal? Were these medieval love potions just a scam, or did they actually work in some twisted way? And how do their wild, dangerous schemes stack up against the tricks we pull to get a date today? If you're thinking, man, I'd never drink poison for a crush, hold that thought. Because the more you dig into this, the more you realize our modern dating games might not be as far removed from those deadly elixirs as we'd like to think. Stick around because we're about to dive deeper into the potions, the poisons, and the downright bonkers things people did for love and how they're not that different from swiping right or sending that risky 1 a.m. text. So we've just stepped out of a muddy medieval village where people were so desperate for love they'd chug a potion that could double as rat poison. Crazy, right? But let's not judge our medieval ancestors too hard. They were working with what they had, which was basically a prayer, a dream, and a whole lot of bad ideas. Now that we've got the vibe of their wild world, let's dive deeper into what made these love potions tick, why they were so deadly, and here's the fun part, how their romantic disasters aren't that far off from the chaos of modern dating. Grab a snack because we're about to unpack some seriously sketchy brews and the desperate hearts behind them. Picture yourself back in that 14th century village where the air smells like smoked livestock and regret. Love potions weren't just a quirky side hustle for the local wise woman, they were a full-on cultural obsession. Why? Because love in the Middle Ages wasn't just about warm fuzzies, it was a high-stakes game. Marrying the right person could mean locking down a plot of land, a steady supply of bread, or even a shot at not dying alone in a plague-ridden ditch. So when someone whispered about a potion that could make your crush fall for you, people didn't just listen, they ran to the market with their last chicken to trade. These potions were like the medieval version of a premium dating app subscription, except instead of unlimited swipes, you got a vial of something that might make your crush swoon, or drop dead. Let's talk about what went into these potions because, oh boy, it's a horror show. We mentioned arsenic last time, but that was just the warm-up. Medieval alchemists and herbalists were like mad scientists with zero safety regulations. One popular ingredient was belladonna, also called deadly nightshade. Sounds sexy, right? Nope. This plant could make your heart race, your pupils dilate, and your face flush. Basically, it mimicked the symptoms of being lovesick. People would see their crush looking all dazed and think, score, they're into me. Meanwhile, their crush was probably just trying not to hallucinate demons. Too much belladonna, and it wasn't love you were sparking, it was a one-way trip to the afterlife. Another fan favorite was fly agaric, that red and white mushroom you'd see in fairy tale illustrations. It could make someone feel euphoric or super out of it, which again could pass for falling in love if you squint. But get the dose wrong and your crush is puking, seizing, or worse. Then there was mandrake root, which was like the rock star of medieval potion ingredients. People thought it was magical because it looked vaguely human when you pulled it from the ground. Creepy, right? They'd grind it up, mix it with wine, and claim it could make someone irresistibly drawn to you. Problem is, mandrake is toxic as heck. It could knock you out or mess with your breathing, which isn't exactly the vibe you want on a first date. And let's not forget the weirder stuff like animal parts. Some recipes called for things like bat blood or toad skin because apparently nothing says I love you like a potion that smells like a swamp. These ingredients weren't just gross, they were dangerous, and the people making them often had no clue what they were doing. It was like trusting a TikTok recipe, except instead of burning your dinner, you might burn your life down. So why did people keep buying these death trap potions? It's not like they didn't notice their neighbors dropping like flies after a bad batch. The answer lies in the chaos of medieval life. Back then, society was rigid. Your status, your job, your whole future often depended on who you married. For women especially, landing a good husband could mean the difference between a cozy hearth and a lifetime of scrubbing floors. Men weren't off the hook either. A strategic marriage could boost their social standing or secure an alliance with a powerful family. Love potions were seen as a cheat code, a way to bend the rules in a world where you had little control. Plus, people genuinely believed in magic. If a wise woman said her potion could make the miller's son propose, you'd hand over your coins and hope for the best, even if the best smelled like death. Now here's where it gets funny. Let's talk about the failures. Not every potion was a total disaster, but plenty were. Imagine slipping your crush a love potion only for them to start vomiting or ranting about seeing fairies. Awkward. There are stories of people who tried to dose their beloved only to accidentally poison the wrong person, like the time a poor guy in 15th century France gave his dream girl a potion that made her dad pass out instead. True story court records from the time mention witches being blamed when potions went wrong, which often meant someone ended up sick dead or just really mad. Some folks were so desperate they'd double down thinking maybe I didn't use enough toad guts. Spoiler more, toad guts didn't help, okay? Let's bring it back to us. We might chuckle at these medieval romantics risking it all for a toxic cocktail, but are we really out here living our best lives? Think about it. We've traded vials of poison for dating profiles that are basically lies with filters. Instead of brewing potions, we're crafting the perfect bio or staging that candid beach pic to look effortlessly hot. And don't get me started on the modern equivalents of love potions, those sketchy pheromone perfumes or attraction supplements you see in ads. Sure, they're not laced with arsenic, we hope, but the vibe is the same. We want a shortcut to love, and we're willing to try some pretty dumb stuff to get it. Medieval folks were out here dodging death for a date. We're just dodging catfishes and ghosting. What's wild is how these potions shaped history. The obsession with love magic didn't just stay in the village, it sparked witch hunts, fueled superstition, and even influenced laws. People got so paranoid about potions that anyone caught brewing one could be accused of witchcraft, which was a fast track to a trial or worse. But those risks also laid the groundwork for early chemistry and medicine. Some of those wise women messing around with herbs were accidentally figuring out what worked and what didn't, paving the way for actual science. So in a weird way, every time you pop an aspirin, you can thank those medieval potion makers for taking one for the team. But here's the big question, did these potions ever actually work? Or were they just a deadly scam? And how do our modern dating tricks like sliding into DMs or posting thirst traps stack up against these old school disasters? If you're thinking, at least I'm not poisoning anyone well, let's hold off on the high fives. Because the more we dig into this, the more we see that the quest for love has always been a little unhinged, whether it's a toxic brew or a risky text. Stick with me because we're about to get into the juiciest stories of love gone wrong and what they tell us about ourselves today. Alright, so we've been on quite the ride, haven't we? We've wandered through medieval villages where people were so desperate for love they'd sip arsenic-laced potions or chug mushroom brews that could make them see unicorns or, you know, just drop dead. We've seen how these love potions were less about romance and more about playing Russian roulette with your crush's vital organs. But now, let's take a step back and chew on what we've learned so far, because this wild history of deadly elixirs isn't just a quirky tale from the past, it's got some serious lessons that hit home even in our world of dating apps and hard eyes emojis. Plus, we're gonna get real about how our modern love games aren't that different from those medieval disasters. So stick with me as we wrap our heads around this and figure out what it all means. Let's rewind a bit. We've learned that back in the Middle Ages, love wasn't just about finding your soulmate, it was a survival strategy. Marrying the right person could mean food on the table, a roof over your head, or a shot at not freezing in a ditch come winter. That's why people were willing to risk it all on potions brewed with stuff like belladonna mandrake or straight up poison like arsenic. These concoctions were supposed to make someone fall head over heels, but more often than not, they just made them fall over permanently. We've also seen how these potions were a mix of desperation, superstition, and some seriously bad science. Medieval folks didn't have WebMD to warn them that heart palpitations weren't a sign of love, but a sign they'd just poisoned their crush. And let's not forget the chaos stories of potions gone wrong, like that guy who accidentally dosed his crush's dad instead of her, or the wise women who got blamed as witches when their brews backfired. It was a messy, dangerous game, but people kept playing it because love was worth the gamble. Now here's where it gets juicy. Those medieval romantics weren't just throwing darts in the dark, they were shaping history in ways they couldn't have imagined. All that potion making, as deadly as it was, forced people to start asking questions. Why did some herbs make you feel wild, and others make you well not feel anything ever again? Those village alchemists and herbalists fumbling with their cauldrons were accidentally laying the groundwork for modern chemistry and medicine. Every time someone survived a bad potion or didn't, it was a lesson in what not to do. Think about it, without those medieval weirdos experimenting with toxic brews, we might not have the drugs or treatments we rely on today. So in a twisted way, we owe our ibuprofen and allergy meds to the folks who thought bat blood was a love spell ingredient. Wild, right? But let's zoom out and think about what this says about us. Those medieval love potions were all about taking a shortcut to someone's heart, even if it meant risking everything. Sound familiar? We might not be brewing toxic sludge in our backyards, but we're still chasing quick fixes for love. Ever spent hours perfecting your dating profile to look like you just woke up like this? Or maybe you've tried one of those shady pheromone colognes that promise to make you irresistible. Yeah, we've all been there, or at least swiped through there. Our modern dating tricks, filters, witty bios, strategically timed texts are just the 21st century version of slipping someone a potion. Sure, we're not risking death, hopefully, but we're still out here trying to game the system, hoping there's a magic trick to make love happen on demand. Medieval folks had their vials of poison. We've got our apps and algorithms. Same vibe, different packaging. Here's a question to chew on. Are we really that much smarter than our ancestors? They were desperate enough to drink something that smelled like a swamp to win a heart. We're out here stressing over the perfect selfie angle or whether our crush saw our story yet. At least their bad decisions had an excuse. No internet, no science, just vibes and folklore. We've got Google, yet we're still falling for 10 ways to make them obsess over you articles that are basically digital love potions. And just like those medieval brews, our modern tactics don't always work. Ever been ghosted after what you thought was a perfect date, or matched with someone who seemed amazing only to find out they're a catfish? It's not arsenic level disaster, but it's still a punch to the gut. The truth is, love has always been a gamble, whether you're in a medieval tavern or a coffee shop in 2025. So what can we learn from these potion-popping ancestors? For one, they teach us that desperation can make you do some seriously dumb stuff. They were so focused on winning love that they'd risk poisoning themselves or their crush. Sound like anyone you know. Maybe that friend who keeps texting their ex at 3 a.m., hoping for a miracle. Or that time you swiped right on someone with a bio that just said YOLO. The lesson here is that love doesn't come with a cheat code. Those potions failed because they tried to force something that's messy, unpredictable, and human. Our modern shortcuts, whether it's a dating app or a perfect first date outfit, can fail for the same reason. Love isn't something you can brew in a cauldron or code into an algorithm. It's about connection, not control. Another big takeaway, risk-taking isn't always bad. Those medieval folks were reckless, sure, but their willingness to try, even if it meant messing with deadly mushrooms, pushed humanity forward. Their failures helped us figure out what works, whether it's in medicine or matters of the heart. Today we're still taking risks when we put ourselves out there, whether it's asking someone out or hitting send on a risky message. Sometimes it crashes and burns, but sometimes it leads to something real. The trick is knowing when to take the leap and when to, not drink the poison. So where does this leave us? We've seen how medieval love potions were a wild mix of hope, danger, and bad decisions, and how they're not so different from our modern quest for love. But there's one more piece to this puzzle. What happens when we take these lessons and apply them to today's world? Are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes, swapping potions for profiles, or can we learn to love smarter? If you're wondering how this all ties together and what it says about our swipe right, double tap culture, hang tight because we're about to wrap this up and figure out what these deadly potions can teach us about finding love without losing our heads. So here we are at the end of our wild ride through the medieval world of love potions where people thought arsenic and toxic mushrooms were the key to romance, only to find out they were more likely to score a date with the Grim Reaper. We've laughed, we've cringed, and we've probably all been grateful we're not chugging poison to impress our crush. But before we wrap this up, let's take one last stroll through this crazy history, figure out what it all means for us today, and maybe even learn a thing or two about love without the risk of, accidental manslaughter. Plus, I've got some fun stuff for you to do after this, so stick around to the end. Let's hit the highlights one more time. We started in a muddy medieval village where love wasn't just about heart flutters, it was about survival. Marrying the right person could mean the difference between eating or starving, so people were desperate enough to buy sketchy potions from cloaked weirdos, promising to make their crush swoon. Problem was, those potions were packed with stuff like belladonna mandrake or straight up arsenic ingredients that could make you flushed and dizzy, sure, but mostly because your body was screaming, "What did you just do to me?" We dug into how these brews were less about magic and more about bad science, with alchemists and wise women playing chemist without a clue. Some folks ended up hallucinating, others ended up in the ground, and a few unlucky ones accidentally poisoned their crush's dad instead. Yikes. But those risky potions weren't just a footnote in history, they helped kickstart early science, giving us the roots of modern medicine. Who knew that a failed love spell could lead to your morning aspirin? Now let's get real for a second. This whole saga isn't just a funny story about our ancestors being a little extra. It's a mirror for us. Think about it, medieval folks were so desperate for love they'd risk death by mushroom. We're not that different. We might not be brewing toxic sludge, but we're out here obsessing over the perfect Tinder bio, agonizing over whether to send that you up text or buying into those sketchy attraction sprays that promise to make you irresistible. It's the same energy chasing a shortcut to love, hoping there's a magic fix to make someone fall for us. And just like those medieval potions, our modern tricks don't always work. Ever poured your heart into a DM only to get left on red? Or spent hours crafting a profile just to match with someone who's just here for vibes? It's not fatal like a bad potion, but it stings all the same. The truth is, love has always been messy, whether you're in a 14th century tavern or swiping through a dating app in 2025. So what's the big takeaway from our potion-making ancestors? First off, they remind us that love isn't something you can force. Those potions failed because they tried to control something that's inherently uncontrollable. You can't make someone love you with a vial of poison, just like you can't make them love you with a perfectly timed selfie or a clever pickup line. Love happens when it happens, and no amount of arsenic or Instagram filters can change that. But there's a flip side. Those medieval romantics were brave. They took huge risks, not just with their health, but with their hearts, putting it all on the line for a shot at connection. That's something we can learn from. Every time you ask someone out, send a risky text, or even just say, "I like you," you're taking a chance just like they did. Sure, it might crash and burn, but that's how you grow, how you learn, and sometimes how you find something real. Another lesson. We're tougher than we think. Those medieval folks faced plague, famine, and potions that could kill them, yet they kept chasing love. We've got our own challenges ghosting, catfishing, or just trying to afford rent while keeping a social life. But if our ancestors could survive a world where love potion was code for possible death sentence, we can handle a bad date or a flop DM. Their resilience reminds us that humans are built to keep going even when things get tough, and honestly, that's kind of inspiring. Next time you're spiraling because someone didn't text back, just think, at least you didn't accidentally poison their entire family at the village feast. Let's tie this to today. We live in a world where tech makes everything feel instant food delivery, streaming, even dating, but love, that's still slow, messy, and human. Those medieval potions were a desperate grab for control in a chaotic world, and our dating apps are kind of the same. They promise the one is a swipe away, but just like a bad potion, they can leave you feeling worse than before. The real magic happens when we let go of the shortcuts and just show up as ourselves, flaws, quirks, and all. That's what our ancestors got wrong. They thought love needed a potion, and it's what we get wrong when we think it needs a perfect profile or a viral TikTok moment. So here's where you come in. What do you think about this? If you were in medieval times, would you have risked a shady potion for your crush? Or would you have stuck to writing bad poetry by candlelight? And how do you see our modern dating game stacking up against those old school disasters? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm dying to hear what you think. If this wild ride through history made you laugh or rethink your dating strategy, hit that like button and share this video with your friends. Maybe it'll save someone from their own version of a bad potion, like sending a risky text at 2 a.m. Oh, and if you're loving these deep dives into the weirdest parts of history, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next adventure. Trust me, we've got more stories that'll blow your mind. If you're curious to keep exploring, check out our video on the craziest medieval fads that make our trends look sane. It's packed with more ridiculous history that'll make you glad you're living in 2025. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. It's been a blast sharing this insane tale of love and poison with you. Have an awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay safe and maybe skip the mushrooms for your next date, yeah?